Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George Affleck.
And it's time for
UnSpun.
You Pelosied!
I just Pelosied us.
You are a genius. That might be my favorite of all time. Amanda did that at our meeting earlier. You weren't even in the room for it, and she ripped something up and she goes, "Oh, I just Nancy'd, I Pelosied." And I'm like, "Oh, that's a verb now."
It's a new verb.
Did you watch the whole State of the Union?
I watched the first chunk, and then I think everybody started yelling at me to turn the TV off in the house. So, and then I caught the end of it, so and saw that. So
you saw that,
yeah.
The end of it. Were you surprised by that?
It's aggressive. It's and there's a lot of hate going on, and the polling is saying about 50-50 on whether she should have done that. But it's a statement. I mean, it's literally, you can't get more of a statement than that. I mean, and after her golf clap last year, and he didn't shake her hand. He totally gave her the pass.
And he lied through the whole thing. I think that's what really, in the post-mortem of it, is that traditionally. And oh my gosh, tradition has gone out the window so much in the last number of years.
And for those of us that hate us when we talk about
international
Trump, and I know there's a lot of Trump supporters who watch this podcast and listen
to
this podcast.
You're welcome.
We're not slamming. We're not slamming Trump. We're talking about is, again, this is a show called UnSpun, and we're trying to go, what is the meaningfulness of this when things like this happen? And you're saying politicians are lying. Well, that's, people always think politicians are lying
because they usually are.
No,
or
I don't know.
Spinning.
Yes.
Maybe promising or speaking carefully is another
Taking
one that
credit
happens.
for stuff that he didn't do is kind of what he was doing, which is not uncommon. I mean,
right.
the NDP do it here. We'll talk a bit more about that later.
Yes, we will.
It's our blaming previous governments, which he did.
And the Liberals are doing.
And they do that. That's what governments do, and
That's
what the president was doing, and then most of his address.
And then the speech, as we are recording on a Thursday, the speech that he did today, where he held up the Washington Post that said Trump acquitted on the front, like he's holding it up for the photo op for everybody. I'm like, you do realize you've been calling that fake news for like 3 years, right? Like now it's real. When it's nice to you, it's real. It's interesting. And then during that speech, he used your favorite word. He didn't call it a bullshit cup of coffee, but he did.
He said bullshit.
He said bullshit on a live.
I'm not a politician anymore, so I can say bullshit. When I was elected, I never said bullshit. Not in public, I don't think. I know I said it in camera a lot of times, and other swear words in camera at City Hall with Vision Vancouver, and they would often yell at me to stop swearing. I said, it's in camera, I can swear as much as I want. And you guys are idiots.
You know who's really swearing right now?
You.
Personal injury lawyers.
Oh, yes.
Big news, this just in.
This
just in. The Premier of British Columbia, John Horgan, and Attorney General David Eby, he of the dumpster fire file of the ICBC.
It's all the Liberals' fault.
Made a
blame.
Huge announcement, though.
Big announcement.
No fault insurance. What do you think of that? Hit us up at UnSpun Podcast with your thoughts on this, because I'd be curious.
Okay, help me understand it. No fault insurance sounds like it's free?
No, you cannot. You no longer have to decide whether it was somebody backing into you that caused your rear bumper to be hit, or if you were stopped at a light and somebody hit your rear of your car. There's no need to argue over whose fault it was, because it's nobody's fault. And your insurance is going to be dinged, and that's it.
You're going to be taken care of.
Yeah, you're going to be taken care of.
If you have an injury, we'll put you through whatever system we need to put you through.
Right. There's one caveat here that's really super important. If someone involved, let's say you're in an accident, and the other person was found to have been doing a criminal act, i.e. drinking and driving, i.e. dangerous driving, that is under the asterisks.
So that's criminal. That's a criminal.
You would then be able to hire a lawyer, and that person would be held accountability as fault. It's like one special subgroup.
What about head injuries and people who are traumatized for life, or what?
So there are automatic, massive allotments of money, from what you're saying, for somebody who could never work again, never walk again, maybe never cognitively deal 7.4 million. Immediate payout to an individual.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
this is going to be cheaper.
It is.
Than all the fighting with the lawyers.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Isn't
you
that
know,
interesting?
they're saying it's going to save 1.4 billion. What I haven't heard yet, and maybe we'll hear this over the next day or 2
I'm
days,
no expert.
is what impact and cost will this add to our healthcare system? I mean, how far will people now be able to go? How many chiropractic appointments? How many, how many massage therapy? How
I
much?
think the
all
answer
that
to
stuff.
that is as many as they need.
But before you had to fight for it.
But you had
get
to
that
fight
stuff.
for it when you needed it most. I'm thinking about not the people that went, oh, my neck. I can get 10 grand out of this if I get a good lawyer, and the lawyer's going to take a big chunk of it. I don't have to pay for the lawyer as long as we win. That could take time. But for the person who's actually significantly injured, on their way to work one day, trying to keep their family afloat, now there won't be the need to figure out and navigate the legalities of it and immediately get help for whatever. And I don't think that someone's going to milk this. Like, you don't get money in your hand and then take it to the chiropractor.
But it's good
your
for those.
chiropractic.
So while the lawyers are getting hit, like you're not going to see those Pressler Law giant ads on the buses and those panel of dudes who walk up to the camera.
There's some fine people who work in the legal profession.
But there's well-known ad Pressler Law. It's very, very. Anyways, but this could be good for chiropractors, and on the one hand, lawyers are getting hurt, but other service providers in the healthcare profession might benefit from this new regulation.
They might find that they have patients who very much need the services, because you're not going to get a payout anymore that assumes that you're going to be going for care. You actually are going for care, because there's a certain, from what I understand, there's very early hours into this, so we'll learn more. And I'm fascinated by it, because I was in a car accident in Hawaii late last fall. Right at the end of our trip, I had my mom and my son in the car. We're stopped at a light, about to turn left into Lahaina, and I got hit from behind by a very large truck. And the woman was lovely. We pulled off to the side. We exchanged all information. She said to take pictures of the damage and which I did. And she goes, well, there's no fault insurance in Hawaii, so hopefully it'll be, everything's fine. And here's my number just in case you need anything. I'm like, fine. I submitted one piece of paperwork, and that was it. It was done.
You weren't injured, obviously.
I wasn't injured. Well, I went to the
But if you
chiropractor
had
when I
been a
came back.
scammer, you might have said, I'm going to make millions. Because other states don't have that. I don't think in the U.S., right? Every
Few
state
do.
is,
Very few do. I don't know what the number is, but no fault doesn't. And when the NDP government tried to put this into effect, when last they were in power here in BC, they were resoundingly called out by the BC disabilities. If you need to have the people with disabilities on side on this, and they are with this now.
Is that because of the cash amount?
I think because it's been done in a way that is not with full consultation on the way down to the decision, but allegedly, the government did ask them to review it and consult with them now moving forward. Because the goal is to really actually take care of people who have been injured. You want to know that you've been covered by your insurance, period.
I'll be interested to see how the BC Liberals if they're going to find something to poke at on this one. It's too soon right now, we don't know, but I haven't seen anything yet because it literally came out half an hour ago. It'll be interesting to see how they can spin this for them to make it a bad thing, or maybe they'll just support it. It's hard to say. But
maybe they'll support it, I doubt it.
They'll find something.
They will find something. Well, the legal community.
I think the cost of healthcare. I think the most expensive thing we have in our province is healthcare, and if it's going to add $1 billion to our healthcare system, then it's a wash, right? I mean, you go from one, Peter to Paul, right? So, I'll be intrigued to see if this will impact. And also, these $7.5 million. Here's how many of those checks are we going to write? Where's that money going to come from? Socialized insurance is an interesting concept. Obviously, I live in a condo right now, and I think yours is condo, right?
Duplex, yeah.
Oh, it's a duplex. Well, if you're a condo owner right now, insurance is going up by thousands, ridiculous, and
I can't imagine.
it makes you kind of go, oh my God, is that next potentially for socializing condo insurance? Because it's going to put a lot of home owners and renters who rent condos. The extra cost is significant. So. Insurance, the industry with this, what's going on with the virus, what's going on with the fires, what's going on with this is all bad for insurance costs.
Can we talk about the virus for a second? We call it the coronavirus.
Yes.
But the front page of the province newspaper did not call it that.
Yeah, the China virus. second China virus. Like
Second China case.
Amanda pointed out, which bugged her.
Second case of China virus, was it?
was.
Yeah. And I
So
think
lots of anger
they
about
called
that.
it that because it was all the right number of characters in that font that fits on a page. That's what that
Potentially,
actually,
yeah. We want a nice photo, and you got to fit the font.
I first thought it was fake because I thought who would do that? That's going to cause all kinds of problems. I thought it was
Right.
maybe the doctored photo that was blowing up on my Twitter feed. Then I thought, okay, well, headline writers oftentimes, or the graphic artists oftentimes, aren't thinking about the context of it as much. But then I thought, okay, well, it's the front page of the paper.
So
then I couldn't find it
slammed for
online.
being racist, and racism is insipid. I've always argued this in council about policies that I perceived that they were. It was implied that they were focused on a certain race and country, and certainly because that was what kind of came up, and I was worried that would create this insipid kind of racism, and we see it happening. It is happening. This racism, money laundering. You're all pointing fingers to China, and now this headline saying China virus. What if they had said China's apostrophe, possessive? Would that be okay? Because it's from, it actually started
probably
in
not.
China?
That's the pushback is people like, what about German measles?
Yeah.
What about MERS, which was Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, which is, and the reason why people want to name this virus is because saying coronavirus, which I'm totally comfortable in calling it the coronavirus.
It was a new coronavirus at first.
The
Because
novel
coronavirus is not.
coronavirus.
Yeah.
It's like SARS is a coronavirus and MERS is a coronavirus and this is a corona, but why not from Wuhan province? I think, like you said, I think there's a big opportunity here to step in it hard and stir up even further racism by naming it like this on the front page of the newspaper right now. I think it's a very tense, obviously, situation. And I think watching the World Health Organization honestly do their almost daily announcements, and when they called a global health emergency, the leader of the World Health Organization's team on outbreaks like this had to have repeated himself 19 times on how impressed he is with China's response to this virus.
I've heard opposite stories, but where they knew about it in December and didn't let anybody know.
Because SARS, when that outbreak happened, China did try to cover it up, and so many more people died, and they really were held to account in a way that it's much improved now.
Right.
And our relations with China are strained at the best of times. I mean, we've got serious political issues and hostages, frankly, being held there.
Remember those guys?
Remember that? So there's a lot that could be unpacked and unspun on this topic, but I think it boils down to the front page of the province newspaper should not be calling this the China virus, period, in my opinion.
And they're feeling, we'll see how they respond, but does it sell newspapers? That old adage. We'll see. But because there is racism now against China very clearly in our region here in British Columbia, Canada, and the United States. There's a lot of hate towards China for lots of different reasons, and I think you get these first-person stories from people who are born here and they're of Chinese descent, and they sense it. They're
getting attacked.
Yeah, and they're just going, I'm like fourth-generation Canadian. What are you talking about? I'm not a money launderer. So it's so that kind of stuff. If it gets okay, it becomes okay to have that kind of headline. That's when you know you've got a problem.
We've also got a problem when you go to the middle of our province. Some might say that the ICBC announcement today was a little bit of a sparkly thing.
Oh, 100%. So we have this big announcement at ICBC, in the exact same couple of hours that people are being arrested on the pipeline protest. I mean, that is not coincidental. That's 100%. The NDP knew that this was going to start happening today, and they said, we got this information, let's release it so we can distract and divert all the attention from media away from these people being arrested about a pipeline that we were not supportive of, or said we weren't, and went through a whole bunch of court cases. And
final court case wraps
Supreme
up.
Supreme Court saying, it's over. Everybody let it go. This thing's getting built.
Yeah.
So this is a very effective, strategitic move by the province to change the conversation and very, Trumpy. Let's just look over here, everybody. Don't look here. But we were talking. I'm trying to think of protests in historically. Where these people chain themselves and they're in for the long haul, and have they ever been successful? Now the only one I could think of in my history is Clayoquot, right?
Clayoquot Sound.
And where there was the big 1,000-year-old trees, and they were tenacious, and they stayed and they stayed and they stayed, and eventually they were victorious.
They stopped the clear cutting in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you think the same could be effective in the pipeline protesters? I mean, is that what they're thinking? We'll just stick it in for the long haul?
It certainly doesn't help that there's derailment of a train carrying crude oil in Saskatchewan that's currently sending massive black plumes of smoke into the air, like literally right now. At the same time,
the alternative to pipelines is always
rail. The resource is going to get moved.
They're going to move it.
It's going to happen. Like that's.
And this is a twinning of a pipeline, by the way.
Right.
A pipeline that has had a few problems in its history, but it's definitely the safest way to transport.
Right.
If you don't like oil and gas, that's one thing. But if we know it exists, it has to be transported.
It's owned by our country.
This is the safest way to do it. Our prosperity relies on the oil and gas industry in this country. Whether you like that or not, it's the truth. Our healthcare, everything we have is because of our resource industry in this country. So.
And I had a young woman on when I was hosting Charles Adler tonight to talk specifically about pipelines, and she was really specific to the Wet'suwet'en and the rumors that were going around that there were RCMP snipers. Yeah. So I mean, careful the spin the other way as well, right? Like you can be anti-pipeline. I have full respect for somebody who says, nope, it's not for me. I don't use products that are petroleum based. I drive an electric car. You walk the walk. You're trying your best. I do.
There's plastic in those electric cars, just so you know.
But I still get it. Like, we can. I mean, oh look, they have a phone.
Yeah, they're wearing
I get
shoes.
It.
They're made of
But
leather.
they're
vegetarian.
But exactly. But there are some I respect because I go meatless Monday. I'm trying to do something, right? So start somewhere. But how militant can you be is another piece. Like I think there needs to be some middle to what we're watching here. And even when people are talking about how, is it called UNIDRIP? UNDRIP? The treaties or lack thereof between First Nation people and the government, and how you need to have unanimous consent from First Nations people to utilize any land in their territories, which some would argue all are their territories. We're just visitors. And so there's another big part of the conversation, but what's coming out in the news stories, and this is a hard topic to cover because people will attack. I know. But I think it's worth putting on the table here on UnSpun is that within the Wet'suwet'en, the hereditary chiefs and the elected chiefs disagree on the pipeline.
Yes.
And therein lies the story here. There's some who absolutely want this to happen, and there are some who absolutely don't. And in that stalemate, who should be the elected or the hereditary? How does that work? That's a question that I don't know the answer to.
One's looking at the history, and the other one's looking for the future. I think, and that's the difference. They're saying this is our territory. We're protecting it. The other's saying we need some cash to have a better life.
So can somehow resolve that, and then have it go to the Supreme Court in a different way? I don't know. I don't know.
These are questions, and that's why we have very few treaties in this province, because it's complicated.
We have complications with the CRTC now.
Oh, yes.
Can we talk about this? The Heritage Minister's name, Stephen Guilbeault. I saw his speech on the topic of this report that's been a panel report from the BTLR.
An independent report, apparently, and came to them, and it's had all these advice of what they should do. The basic gist, he goes on and talks about what it was seemed like in the first sort of version of it was that there was going to be more control over media, all media. And this all comes from really digital media and the impact it's having on all other media and the Facebook's power and all that stuff.
Disruption, for sure.
And currently the way it works is we have radio and TV have been controlled by CRTC. You can't open a TV station or radio station just like if you want to.
You need a license.
You have to get a license, whereas a newspaper, you could always just open it up.
You can start a podcast.
With that now, but a newspaper actually has to be Canadian owned, by the way.
Yes.
And so but we can start a podcast, but nobody's asking us who owns us or whether we have a license or not. And so there's lots of questions about how do we, I think the initial reason for regulations was to make sure that we protected Canadian content and we told our stories, and that's why CBC exists. And the question comes down to, well, if we're spending almost $1.5 billion at CBC. Is that not enough Canadian content? Let the private sector do their own thing. Unless you want to get rid of the CBC and take that $1.5 billion and invest it into good content that's made by Canadians, that would be great. I think that there's that argument that exists, but we're facing this challenge by digital media and the complications that it has, and I think it's a hornet's nest. I'm not a big fan of regulation, and I think Canadian content is great, but I think those days are over. And the question of ownership is definitely one that needs to be addressed. If newspapers and other mediums can't sustain themselves because they're Canadian owned or they have those restrictions, then are real in trouble because they won't exist. And Facebook will tell us all our stories.
I don't know that we can blame the competition, the CRTC, for how threadbare things have become, how the ability to compete has become more and more difficult, because there's still a lot of money in media and creating good content, like you said. And if it's good content, people will watch it. I believe that. I believe that telling me that I can't watch a Super Bowl commercial from the United States because we need to be able to sell commercials and can't block that feed, I think those days are over. I think that
and ironically, all the media show those commercials the next day
on the but in this BTLR panel report, and Rob Brackenrich wrote a great sort of commentary on this global news site, and I hope to talk to him more about it, because there are about 100 recommendations, and there are about 20 of them that are ridiculous. And then there are some that actually make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, so the minister the next day came back and said, I didn't mean to say that. What I meant, we're going to review these 100 recommendations. And so all the, Twitter went crazy again, saying, was he bullshitting us?
That all seems like sparkly things. Because our
he's
Netflix
the minister in charge. He's the one that's going to tell us.
You go south and watch different shows on your Netflix.
Yeah, but Netflix is not taxed in Canada. Neither is Facebook. Neither is Google. They don't get taxed.
Which is one of the recommendations.
Why? Exactly, but that's not hard to figure out.
But then they're going to pass that along to the consumer, which is the concern, right? So that's the conversation that we need to have. I'm frustrating you, and I love it.
Taxation, where it's clarity on where that taxes are going. So if you're going to tax Netflix and you're going to tax Facebook, that money should immediately go into investing in
creating
arts
content.
and culture, content in Canada by Canadians.
Build studios.
Of course, we know that the government won't do that,
right,
like they don't do with so many other crown corporations, and the money just goes into a giant pit, and we don't know what happens. I think that's the original concept of the carbon tax in BC. There was clarity in that tax. It was in that how it worked. Now the NDP have ruined it, and now it's just a big giant cash cow for the provincial government to tap into. That's not good taxation. And so, if you can create a tax on Facebook and all those platforms that are American owned, that are getting away and getting all their content into our country, that then goes into investing in content. And I think that's a good thing, and I think they should immediately do that. What is the wait? Why are you waiting? They gave the newspaper industry a lot of money for creating content. They get a lot of heat for that.
The bailout.
But they're,
the bailout.
But what would be better if they would just tell CBC to stop stealing all the community newspapers' content. That would be great. But they, make your own content. So, I think there's ways the government can get involved that are immediate. They don't need a report for that. Just do it and be transparent.
I agree with that. The transparency piece, I think, is a huge part of this political landscape that's shifting, and the taxpayers are no longer trusting enough that big bucket where it's all going into general is enough. We need to watch it go from point A to point B where it's meant to land, and worrying about what the Heritage Minister said, not really knowing what the heck he was talking about, probably not the best way to handle it. It's an
important position, and if the guy can't do the job, he shouldn't be doing the job.
Right.
He's the face of the Heritage Ministry, and if he's not competent, then he shouldn't be there. And that's a question the Prime Minister should be asking himself right now, going, is this guy the right guy for the job? To have that kind of screw up is not cool. It's an important issue in our country. Many people's lives are at stake here as far as their livelihoods, and this minister doesn't seem to have a grasp of the importance of what he's up to here. I
can't tell you how many times working part-time for Chorus that I get emails from people or tweets from people telling me how we're getting government money to do, you know.
Well, you do get government money, or the media. Those media do get government money because it's protectionist. You know, newspapers got the cash, okay, but they're not protected the way the broadcast industry is by licensing. So you have to think about the two ways that the government helps media. In the case of newspapers, they're giving, it's the first time they've ever given newspapers money in the history of newspapers in this way, and it's going directly to journalists who get to pay for journalism. But where the broadcast industry historically, it's been control of the access to actually creating the content, and that gave them the ability for many years to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And now that's gone because anybody can start up a podcast and have a broadcast network
and compete
without licensing. And that is a question. So should we have licensing? Is that even something we should do anymore? Imagine if we said to Chorus and all those companies, sorry, you know what? You don't have to do a license. Anybody can start a TV station. I don't think they'd be very happy about that.
No, but they're not getting the 1.4 billion a year that the CBC gets.
Yeah, well, that's where the bigger question to me is the role of CBC. Do we need a broadcaster that reaches out into every corner of the country? Do people need that now that we have the internet? That was the original concept of the CBC, was to reach the whole country, to keep us united.
You don't need cable. It was just
over
the
the air. You could put your antenna on top of your TV.
And there it would be.
And then you have to hold
hello
out
out there. We're on the
air.
air.
Yeah.
It's Hockey Night.
Oh,
and now you can even get a cab in Vancouver.
Oh, see what happens when you free up the market?
Yes.
Free the market.
I really fired George up this week. I haven't seen him that on it.
Well, so yeah, I was out last night.
Yes.
I was out a little late last night. I'm feeling a bit rough today.
Is that what's going on, George?
Doing client work. Sorry.
No, it's okay. No, you're good. No.
I probably do.
No.
So I was wandering home after doing my important client relations at networking. Thank you, Amanda. Around 2 o'clock, just after 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm walking down Granville Street in front of the Roxy, which I was not in.
Sure.
Those days are long over.
He was doing body shots at the Roxy.
Yeah,
and
that's
starting
right.
the rumor here and now on UnSpun at George
_
Affleck.
So yeah, there was at least, I was going to count them, but I was also, I was going to go home. But there was probably 70 cabs parked on Granville, lights on, ready to go. I put it on you can see my tweet, a little video I created. I'm like, here we go. I mean, it was, but people are saying, well, Wednesday night at 2 in the morning. First of all, I should be just getting a high five on that. But, thank you.
Never let your pal hanging.
Yeah. And then, but they're saying, well, try it Saturday night. So the challenge is on. I guess I'm going out Saturday night, everybody.
You got to do it till 2 a.m.
Gotta
Walk
get up
down
there.
Granville
Amanda,
Mall.
let's party.
There you go. I'll check that Sunday morning.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
Not too early, though.
Not too early.
Yeah.
One last note on the middle this week. I'm a little bit ranty.
You went on the housing rant.
I went on the housing rant. Just build it. Build it now. I'm done with the permitting department. I'm going to keep talking about this until I think, in my writing it all down naive self way, that we need to create an affordable housing or housing crisis permitting department. Yes, I just said, oh God, we got to take some 43 people. Look at how much water you've drank.
I know, I got this bit of a cough.
We got to just, if there could be a jump the line permitting office, because it's first in, first out right now, the affordability crisis.
The problem
is
it's still the same
lands.
rules. You see that post with a tree, and the guy had to keep the tree from it's just like the rules and regulations and the policies and the layered bullshit at City Hall. It's like that's the challenge. Let's just slam 50% of the shit at City Hall off the table and let this process get going. I mean, that's the problem. You get these bureaucrats going, okay, I got A and B and C, and when A doesn't meet with C and D and this and that, and you're like, oh my God, can I just get approval on my bathroom renovation, please?
Yes.
It's ridiculous. It's 3 years minimum to get something built in the city. That's atrocious.
It is.
5 if you're building a big building. I mean, come on, get on it. I agree. Well done.
Thank you.
And it's not a NIMBY issue. It's just come on. This is even stuff that's approved that we all can't get built. It's ridiculous.
Even the things that we need.
Yeah.
Even the things that, and municipalities next door are getting it done.
Well, some of them are.
Some are.
Some are better than others.
Some are, man. Drive through Ladner. You want to see gentle density? You want to see a community building around the downtown and sort of out, and there's trees and there's schools and there's parks and, families are everywhere, strollers are everywhere. People are loving it.
Sounds like utopia.
It is. It's
Are
Ladner.
you working for the
And
Ladner?
no, as somebody
government now.
As somebody who grew up in Tawasin, me talking nice things about Ladner. That's it for today's UnSpun.
Thanks.